Welcome to the NuriEdge Podcast, where neuroscience meets leadership and real-world performance. I'm your host, Lacey Matthews, along with Mariana Merritt, and our guest today is Courtney Robertson. Courtney is an HR director based in Henderson, Nevada, with a career spanning healthcare, law, nonprofits, and even pro sports. She got her start with the Anaheim Ducks. Courtney specializes in employee relations, training, and benefits design, and she's a passionate voice for why real leadership will always be a people skill and not a tech problem. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so your background really has spanned a number of industries. I think we talked about emergency medicine, sports, nonprofit, law, and now supplements. And along the way, you've really built a consistent and amazing network of humans. I am actually really curious if you can tell us a little bit about kind of how you built that. Was it intentional? What are the benefits that you have just having this group of good humans around you?
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, my network is so important and just learning different skill sets. I mean, being in human resources, I've found that a lot of the people that I work with have such a diverse span of experience and talent, I guess. And going into kind of recruitment, emergency medical recruitment, my director of HR at the time, she taught me how to do orientation and compliance, a lot of the compliance and what to look for in orientation, how to orientate new hires. And we just ended up getting along so well. So that relationship has been maintained. And then going into the Anaheim Ducks, I mean, we had so many different HR managers with different diverse skill sets, from benefits, from just different thought processes too, just on how, how are you supposed to think about complex issues, anywhere from employee relations or even technical workflows, right, or processes. And I think just focusing on those talents of different individuals have really helped me, I guess, look up to these people really. And with that, it really helped me maintain those relationships. And then just learning, the beautiful things about what people know, right? Like, how can we apply this based on your thought process? How can we apply this to real life problems in the workplace? And they're so different. I mean, people have so many of a different perspective that I take it as a value, and yeah, it's just really beautiful to learn. But also personality too, right? I mean, I think human resources are we're kind of a tight-knit group of people. I just went to a HR dinner the other night, and we all kind of had the same, I guess, personality types, if you will, archetypes, if you will. So I think just general personality types just have really maintained those relationships.
Gosh, while you were talking, I wrote down how much I really appreciate that you're talking about valuing lived experiences. And I think at your core as a professional, it just comes through loud and clear that you value people. So in keeping with this theme, I wanted to hear you talk more about kind of how we value the people and process, because a lot of the success that you bring to businesses are very like, how do you make meaningful process happen? So in our pre-conversation, I wrote down that you said people and process are the keys to success in any industry. And spot on. But when a leader tells you that something is really important, how do you translate that into actual process, metrics, workflows that reliably deliver? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're having a really important outcome, I guess, and this is something that I've learned from the Anaheim Ducks, right? When we were supporting the implementation of HRIS Workday, if you're familiar. And instead of focusing on the outcome, in order to implement the workflows, you have to start with the very first thing. What is the very first thing that you want to do, whether it starts with an idea or whether it usually does start with an idea, but you start with something, right? And then that triggers something else, and just kind of going through really detailed on what the triggering components are to implement the workflow in order to get the outcome that we want. And I think during those exercises, it really shows what needs to be measured in order for us to get the outcome that we want. Something that I'm kind of working on now is we're kind of in like we sell supplements, but we also sell, we have to market our supplements, right? And so within the marketing, how do we know the success of the sale of products, right? And that's our CAC to our LTV. Okay, so that's the result that we want. But how do we measure that CAC, right? And what are the different elements in those workflows in order to get the result that we want? And that's kind of, we're starting with like the different landing pages, making sure that like our different landing pages are being tracked effectively. I mean, starting with, okay, we want to sell this product. How are we going to get it to where we lower the CAC, right? And we increase our LTV, which could be separate different processes, but really just defining.
Okay, I'm going to pause you right there for 1 second, because I know we always get this feedback. We all eat our own separate alphabet soup. Can you break down the alphabet soup you're using for our listening audience in case they're in a different industry than yours?
Yeah, absolutely. CAC is customer acquisition costs, so how much it takes to acquire a customer, and then LTV is lifetime value.
Perfect.
So we have kind of our ideal CAC, customer acquisition cost to LTV, lifetime value. But again, how do we get there? We have a whole team. We have teams that are responsible for certain processes as part of this, full, department or effort, really. But how do they interconnect with one another in order to get the one common goal? And I think I'm going off on a tangent here because now I'm kind of forgetting the question. But I guess if you have a leader that says, this is the importance of what I want, well, I kind of have to think about, okay, what's the very first part of how we implement to get what we want, I guess. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that takes a little bit of TLC, right? Because you have to kind of stop and think about it. And it's like, what is the exact thing? And I guess the other example would be recruiting, right? So what's the very first thing? Well, first we have to plan with what positions we actually want. And I think that's kind of the first. Then we want to go into maybe a requisition, right? So now we have to put a requisition to ping, the recruiters. Hey, I'm the hiring manager. Hey, recruiter, I need this position to be posted. And then that kind of goes into the next bucket of the recruiter then posting the position, sourcing, and then going through the motions there. So, sometimes we get caught up in, I just need this person, right? But then we forget the job description. We forget, is it necessary? We forget, who we need to ping or who we need to loop in on the necessity of this position. So, again, going back to like the Anaheim Ducks, I think that thought process, again, the change in the thought process, the perspective has really been deferred to one of my former managers, Angel. And he was really good at putting things in boxes and putting things in workflows and translating that into how a system would work. And that's kind of how I rewired my brain carried it through my different career paths.
Yeah, that systems thinking is what allows us to take something that is a desire, a priority, a need, and then operationalize it in the way that you described really intentionally. And to think through how are we engaging diverse perspectives, diverse inputs, because it is kind of iterative. Sometimes we make a plan and then you run it. So my next question is really around like, what are the core design principles that you use when you're helping scale something to make sure that we're not burning people out?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. As you're talking about like, hey, we have this high need, we have a high priority identified, we put some systems in place, we think we have a new protocol. It's been measured like we're going to get the outcome that we want, but then we run it in practice. We have 20 people implementing, and the people feel like, oh my gosh, we really need like 50 people to do this. How do you iterate on systems thinking to make sure that we're protecting, obviously for business, we're always balancing the goals, the outcomes, the business wins with how do we protect the people from burnout?
I think when you're going through those different system implementations, just identifying where automation can come in, especially in this age of AI. I mean, and it's so funny because I just posted something on LinkedIn the other day where it's like, HR has been doing AI for a long time. Like this is our thing, is just going in and seeing what can be automated, what can be templatized, what, if we're using Excel, what formulas can we integrate so that we're not having to do like manual adjustments. And I think that's really important, and that comes with a diverse skill set too, right? So if somebody has more AI experience or systems experience or Excel experience, and they know, sometimes I'll lean on my accounting person, right, or my controller, because they're Excel gurus, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that this can be integrated. This particular step can be integrated. I just don't have a formula for it. Like, what are your thoughts? And more than likely there's some, the reality is it's not going to be completely automated in the day of AI. That could be challenged now, but I think as we go through these workflows, having it in the back of your mind of where those manual steps can be eliminated and where we can automate. So we're not duplicating efforts. It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is duplicating efforts. If it's somewhere, if it's hosted in one particular place, we can more than likely automate it to be in another place if we need a different perspective, or if another department needs to use it. So that's, I hope that answered the question. I think that's kind of how I support the burnout. On the flip side, at the same point, I guess, it can't, I don't think manual processes can ever be completely eliminated. Again, I think that comment can be challenged in the day of AI. But we still have to do some manual effort, some manual work to make AI work. And there should still be some, checks and balance to make sure what we're getting is still accurate, right? So I think the automation is really important, removing as many duplicated efforts as we can, to say, and that shifts perspective a little bit too, to show progress rather than like doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, well, okay, if we take a look back, this is how much we've done so far, in kind of those incremental steps to get to where we want to be.
I think that all makes sense. The way we have to iterate on process, the way we have to step back and look at, we designed something that in theory should work. And then we roll it out and we find out where that doesn't fit with our humanity. Where does that feel uncomfortable? And then we come back to it. Or we hope that we do, right? We identify that.
Yeah. It's kind of like a funnel too, right? Where you start with kind of this big issue and then you start funneling it down and kind of eliminating, okay, we've eliminated this big issue or we've completed this. Now we're kind of going down the funnel to making it refined and perfect, I guess.
Yeah. There is a well-known researcher and author, Eli Goldratt, who has this thing called the theory of constraints. And his perspective, I really geek out on. It's that like every system will have something that's the biggest constraint in it. That's where things get bottlenecked. There's always a spot that's a little bit gummy. So we take that one, we look at it, we fix it, we remove that constraint. And then we go, oh wait, what's now the next one? So because now we've removed that, something else is now the highest priority or the loudest, the squeakiest wheel. But I love what you're describing as like you build a vision of a system and then iteration over iteration, you just keep removing those constraints. You take out the biggest problems and then you start chipping away at the next ones. And it's a real commitment, I think, as a leadership approach, because it's easy to want to say like, okay, well, I tweaked a thing or two and now I can move on to the next fire I want to legitimately put out. But the importance, I like how you describe, of iterating it on it again. I'm curious, and maybe we can end ourselves with this. You mentioned a lot about just the automation that we can do and how important it is to look at, is part of our burnout that we're still doing tasks we don't have to. But you've made some really great points, though, of the system can never just be like, set it and forget it, because we have to check the homework. We know that things hallucinate. We also know that sometimes we don't give clear directions. I'd love to hear what your perspective is on finding that balance of like, we know that the AI world is here, right? We're not going to get away from that. But how do we make sure it always serves the human? And where are those human points that must stay? I'd love to hear your perspective there.
I mean, I guess when we utilize AI from a technical standpoint, right? Because that's kind of really where it's hyper focused, and from my perspective right now, is going back and validating. I mean, again, to your point, like those hallucinations, right? It's actually a side story, really funny. I was trying to do, I think I was telling you this in our prelim conversation, of using AI to keep my graphics of my new hire orientation like on brand with the company and consistent. And I would use ChatGPT to do the prompt for another AI, and it was so chaotic. I mean, it was so chaotic, and I would feel like I would give it good direction, but what came out of it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so wildly off. No matter how much I tried to say, keep it consistent, don't change the logo, keep the color scheme consistent. And it's like, oh my gosh, it like didn't listen to me, or it got exhaustive. And so the prompts with AI are incredibly important too, and that's a human function. That's completely
Absolutely.
a human function. What do you want out of this tool? It's kind of like implementing HRIS systems, right? Like the implementation is only as good as the information that you're giving to the implementation specialist.
Yeah.
Understanding kind of, that human nature, I guess, and I guess similarly with AI, what information are you giving in order to get out of it? But yeah, I'm kind of going off track. So I'm sorry. What?
No,
what
you
you
were
were
speaking
saying
to it
again?
great. Just, I think you were speaking really specifically to it about where humans have to stay involved in our technology, and
Humans.
what I think is really specific about that is recognizing that the technology is the tool. That humans, like, we will keep existing. We need our tools to serve us, and finding that balance of like, when are we too dependent, or where do we need to stay participant? I'll tell you a funny, just earlier this week, I was creating some graphics as well, trying to create some LinkedIn ads or something, and gave Claude information about a challenge that middle managers have. And it came back with a graphic about managers having a challenge with fat in their middle, not middle managers. It thought it was a problem. It was like, that's not what, it was a really, really
Yeah, no,
funny
you're not.
return
Yeah,
of describing a problem for middle managers.
right.
And then being like, here's a problem that managers have with their middle. It was really, really hilarious. So you have to stay engaged. You have to keep your eyes on things. And yeah, keep it
Sorry to
served.
interrupt, but just to go off of that too, I mean, just the way that we think, right, is so complex. I mean, and it's so diverse, and it's hard to put in human perspective into one consolidated AI because
Yeah.
we're so unique. Um, and so getting what we want, I mean, if I input a prompt into chat of the same, this may be the same prompt, right? Maybe it's chat versus Claude. I mean, you could get two very different outputs, right? Or maybe I change a couple of the words because maybe, the one iteration of a phrase that I use is slightly different versus, or the dialect or whatever, right? But no, I mean, that human component is so important. It's so important. We can use AI as a tool, but uh, we have to lean on the people to make sure that the AI is still being used to what we want it to be used for. Um, yeah, I don't think it, and maybe I'm wrong. Talk to me in like 10 years, right? But I don't think it could ever fully replace humans. I think in some things, yeah, sure it can, but you still have to think. We still have to have the thought process behind what we want these machines to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the feeling. Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Like, I don't need that negativity in my life, okay?
Don't judge my waistline. I didn't
Yeah,
ask for that.
right.
Yeah,
Don't need your
it's really
unsolicited
true.
opinion, AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, I do think, that human touch is so important and it's so crucial. I mean, just how do you operate AI, right? What's the intent behind it? It's not here to replace, right? And that's where you have to lean on other humans to teach you different perspectives, again, on how you can apply it to your role, to your organization, to, what does leadership want? How do you interpret what AI is giving you? And
Yes.
that is those are human conversations that I don't think AI right now can or maybe should replace those conversations.
I could not agree more. I think we can use it to support human interaction, to free us up for more higher thinking and connection and those things that are really what moves the needle for us as humans at our core. And so really I love the way that you're describing just the thinking about it and the way that it can just open us up to more of like the way that humans think is really complicated. Our thought process are very complex. So if we can give ourselves more time for that deeper thought, for that more um, intentional thought, I think we move so much further.
Yeah, I
Well,
love that intentional thought. Yeah, that's
yes.
great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We truly appreciate it. This has been a pleasure. If anything has resonated with you listeners in our conversation from today or made you think a little deeper, we'd love to hear from you. You can find both Courtney and NuriEdge on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Thank you so much.